All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone. We have a huge room here full on campus and a lot of people online as well. So super excited to have this great turnout today. Obviously, it's a really important topic. We're all feeling it, right? We're all feeling the stress and the tension and just life is hard right now. So we're super excited to have Julie Brummer here. If those of you who aren't already familiar with Julie, she's one of our 2 counselors here on campus who meets with students in person as well as over the phone or on Zoom. So if at any point in time, one who's watching wants to reach out to Julie or Jenny, we would certainly welcome that. My name is Sarah Flanagan. I'm the director of our community health program, as well as our IPE or our interprofessional education program here at the college. For students, we certainly want you to attend as many events as possible, but if you are attending this one for IPE credit, this is approved for both the knowledge and the community categories. So you will pick one of those to have it count toward, and just make sure that the reflection, which is located in module 5, that you submit that within 90 days. Okay, that's 3 months. That's really a generous amount of time. Make sure you turn that in. If it does go past the 90 days, you won't be able to use this for credit, but you will still glean all of the valuable information that Julie has to share. So without further ado, one quick reminder for our online folks, if you will please type in your name and whether you're a student or an employee, that will be great. We'll do a prize drawing at the end for students. So we want to make sure we have everybody recorded and eligible for that drawing. And if you have questions in the online group, feel free to chat those in too, and then we'll stop periodically. Or at the end, Greta is manning the Zoom and she'll be able to open those questions to Julie as well. So without further ado, Julie Brummer.
Hi, you guys. Hi, you guys. Again, my name is Julie Brummer, and I wanted to thank Sarah Flanagan and all the SST people for having me come talk. Hopefully, this is going to be really just a very relaxed, kind of a lot of fun stuff that some of it you will just remember, and I hope something will be new for you. But I thought it was, this is going to be really hard for me to do it in an hour. So some of you that know me, okay, but some of you that don't know me, bear with me, because this, I could probably make a whole class out of this because there's so much I wanted to say. But anyway, let's get going. Okay, first of all, I just kind of wanted to let you know, just touch base of this is kind of my goal today. And this is what I kind of would like you to have a takeaway from. So just understanding how affect, mood, and motivation affect our physical and mental health. Look at what type of mindset, affect, motivation you are personally cultivating today, knowingly and unknowingly. Like the majority of what our mind is doing, we have no idea what our mind is doing. And that can kind of sometimes get us into trouble. Also, just looking at the states and traits and behaviors associated with positive mood and motivation, not only just positive as far as being a success in your life, but also positive towards mental health and positive towards physical health, because it's all connected. So it all reacts. And then look at several practices that create a more positive state, traits, and behaviors that help you be more successful. Okay. And then I just thought real quick, working definitions. We talk about cultivating, right? And that means to acquire or develop something. I can't tell you how many times people come into counseling and they want this, they're here, but they want to be there. Nothing's going on in between here. So it's like, just like anything you are learning, you kind of have to do things in order to learn to be different. It doesn't just kind of magically, happen. So I really, there's things that you can do to change your mood, your affect, and then your motivation. Okay. And then positivity, you hear that word a lot, is the tendency to practice being positive or optimistic. Okay. Affect is the immediate expression of emotion. It's a state, kind of a state of being. Mindset is more of a trait. It's more of a permanent. It's the set of attitudes and beliefs that we have about ourselves and others. And it's usually kind of developed out of different affects that we have or experience. And then motivation, the reason or reasons one has for acting or behavior in a particular way. Kind of really just wanted to get some simple definitions. This isn't rocket science. It's really simple. but it's not easy, okay? Happiness is not a permanent state. Wholeness is. Don't confuse that. So sometimes what we say to ourselves and the language we use, I want to be happy. I just want to be happy. You can, but you need to understand if that's what you're striving for, it won't last because it's not a permanent state. But feeling grounded and whole and safe within yourself is, okay? I love these. I thought I'd start with a few just quotes. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, and optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. That's Winston Churchill. Choose to be, this is my favorite, choose to be optimistic. It feels better. That's the Dalai Lama. It's never too late to be what you might have been. Fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. That is so true. Progress has little to do with speed, but much to do with direction. And this is another one of my favorites. If plan A didn't work, the alphabet has 25 more letters. So health and positivity. So when you hear the word positive psychology, that in a nutshell is really what we're talking about. There's a whole branch of psychology called positive psychology, but there's also a whole group of individuals called coaches. This is kind of where coaching came from, is they basically adopted a lot of positive psychology's theories and studies, which have been founded to be, really effective. But when you hear the word positive psychology, what are some of the things you think of? Just throw them out. Anybody? Hello. Optimism. Anything else? Manifesting. Okay. A little juicier.
Confidence.
Okay. So when we think of positive psychology, we mostly think of thinking, right? Positive thinking. And that couldn't be further than the truth of what positive psychology is. So what I found a definition of it that I really love. So pardon me, I really would like to share it with you, but it's too long and I can't memorize it. Positive psychology is the scientific study of strengths that enables individuals and communities to thrive. The field believes that people want to live meaningful and fulfilling lives, to cultivate what is best within themselves, and to enhance their experience of love, work, and play. And positive psychology was first used way back in 1954. Okay, so this is not actually anything new. And it was used by a man named Maslow. And he really felt like psychology and the focus on what is wrong with us or what isn't right with us is very limiting. Like we're only looking at half, we're not looking at the whole. And then in 1984, a physician named Bernie Siegel, anybody know him? He came out with a book called Love, Medicine, and Miracles. And that was in 1984. I read that book in 1984. I was like 17 years old. I have no idea why I read it, but I loved it. And basically what he noticed was, he's a surgeon, and he noticed that there was a very distinct difference between the patients that healed and got better and recovered quicker than those that didn't. So he started to study what the difference was. And so what he noticed is it was a lot of these different states and traits and behaviors that we're going to talk about a little later. But this is not, a new idea. Okay. And then probably one of the biggest studies that supports the study of positive psychology is with foster care kids. So they wanted to see why were some kids that were in the foster care system able to thrive and succeed and others didn't. That's where it all came from. And then a very familiar term, you'll also recognize that led to the study of positive psychology, the placebo effect. So we used to think nothing was going on with the placebo effect. Well, we now know on a biological level, there's all sorts of stuff going on with the placebo effect. So lots and lots and lots of research that's been done for that, okay? Now I want you to take a moment. Oh, did everybody get a piece of paper? Okay. I wanted to do this really quick. This is one of my favorite things to do. We're gonna do whoop, 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 whoop. Okay. So take a look at it, and that's what it means. So I want you to take a piece of paper, and just in a little spot on the piece of paper, I want you to write down, what do you wish for yourself? It could be academically, since you are here in a program, most of you, right? You're all in a program, and it could be something personal, but I always, for students, I would probably say, it would be really nice if it kind of reflected something about a wish for yourself within this, journey that you're on with school. Then once you do that, how would you feel if you got this outcome? How would you feel if you got your wish? Then the third piece is, what are the obstacles in your way of getting your wish? So maybe pick, if you have more than one obstacle, maybe pick the biggest obstacle for you. But what are the obstacles in your way of getting your wish? Okay. And then the last is P, which means plan. I want you to come up with one action step that would help you overcome that obstacle. And this is really just for you. But this is a really, really effective mental way to keep you on track, especially if you're getting stuck. It can keep you from getting stuck, and it really can help you stay motivated. Okay. But it's called WOOK. And it's really good to update this. Okay. There is a lot of research saying that writing something down, it is a lot more meaning and a lot more, it's a bigger step towards change than just talking. You know, the old adage, you hear something, you remember this amount, you write it down, you remember this amount, you actually do it, you remember this amount. It's kind of that whole thing. The other thing is too, is sometimes we got so much going on up here that when you write it down and you get some of it out, it helps clear your mind. And then you have a better perspective. So lots of great reasons to pick up your pen and start writing stuff down. We also know that on a psychological level, when we cross lists, when we cross goals off our list, it actually boosts your serotonin level. Like, we know that. Isn't that amazing? It's so, all this stuff is so simple. Okay. So I just wanted you to touch base. We talked about how is being negative, talking negative, feeling negative, how does that affect our overall health? Well, here you go. Leading detriments to overall health, behavior is 40%. Genetics is 30%. Environment, social, and healthcare make up the rest. So what we are doing with ourselves is 40% of what will lead us into the hospital or the doctor's office. Okay. So we really need to take a look at that. Health and positivity. So thinking most impact your cardiac system and your immune function. We know that. I'll talk a little bit about that later, why that is. Your whole system is vulnerable, but in particular, the heart is most vulnerable and the immune system is most vulnerable. And I can tell you right now, you've all experienced why your immune system is most vulnerable. Has anybody gotten really sick after being really stressed out? There you go. There's a whole physiological reason for that, and I can't really go into that, but that's just a great example of that, okay? Well, I'll talk a little bit, though, about your heart. How long you hang on to negative stress is more damaging than the actual event. So if something happens and it really upsets you, but you keep reliving it or you keep talking about it and you keep hanging on to it, that is actually when the harmfulness happens, not the actual event. Okay. Persistent instigators such as stress, poor sleep, unhealthy diet, negative, unsupported relationship Isolation and lack of exercise can disrupt the balance between your autonomic nervous system, and it causes the sympathetic nervous system to shift into overdrive. So then that one symbiotic relationship kind of gets hijacked. And everybody is uniquely different in that way. And so how to get that balance back is going to look a little bit different for everybody, but that is something that actually happens is you just get these blips and these releases of the stress hormones. Well, we're designed to have the really good relaxation hormones to balance it out. But when there's too many and your system gets saturated with the stress hormones, then, you know, the cleaning system has to work way, way harder. You know, it's like going into an elementary school bathroom as opposed to like your own bathroom. Okay, yeah, I thought that was a good one. Okay, and so the other thing that I want you to understand is when we talk about positivity or we talk about positive psychology, positivity isn't about, it's not about ignoring what's negative or what you may feel bad about or the thoughts that may be negative and detrimental or harmful to you. It's not about ignoring them. What it is about is like, you know, having them come to the surface, and then how do we, you know, how do we work through that obstacle? Okay, what would it take to overcome that obstacle? Because there's something you have to remember. You can't be brave without being afraid. Okay, you can't persevere without wanting to quit, and you can't have self-control without first being really tempted or sometimes losing control. So that opposition is always a balance. Okay. Right. Oh, and then really quick, I'm not going to ask you to raise hands, but you can just answer it in your head. How many of you think the opposite of negative thinking is positive thinking? Just like in your head, answer that to yourself. Okay. It is not. The opposite of positive thinking or the opposite of negative thinking is not positive thinking. There's actually no correlation except for the fact that it's thinking, but they are not correlated. They don't, they kind of don't access the same systems, or they don't work on the same systems. If we want to talk about the autonomic nervous system, the opposite of negative thinking is non-judgmental thinking. And you have to be able to cultivate a sense of non-judgmentalness in order to get to the positive. You cannot go from one and skip a step and go to the other. It won't last, and it won't really absorb into your being. It's just kind of a temporary band-aid, because sooner or later that negative thinking will come back up and you'll go, well, that didn't work. So the opposite of negative thinking is really just being, just space, non-judgmentalness. Okay, so heart rate variability, really quick. I want to do this. Can you guys stop chewing? Just for a second. I wanted to do this quick. So I want to talk about heart rate variability. Okay, so what I want you to do is for a minute, and I'll tell you when to go. I want you to count how many breaths you take in a minute. Okay, everybody ready? Swallow, swallow your food. Okay, ready? To yourself, count your breaths. Go. and stop. Okay, two things I want you to notice. A minute is kind of a long time. So think of all the minutes that you have that you could just take to do something as simple as this, or something else, or something else. So a minute is a lot longer than you think it is, okay? So I just wanted you to jot down on your paper how many breaths you took in a minute. If we had time, I mean, we could chat and all that stuff, but we don't. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is heart rate variability. Does everybody know what that is? Heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is, you know, beep, beep, beep is your heartbeats, right? What is that? What is that? EEG, right? Beep, beep. What is the one with the head? EEG. That's EEG. My son has epilepsy. That's why I was like, that doesn't sound right. So EKG is the heart. So it's the space in between each beat. That is considered heart rate variability. If you don't know much about it, it's actually a very fascinating thing to learn about because they use it to diagnose a lot of stuff nowadays. One of the things they use heart rate variability to diagnose is heart disease. So it's a really cool thing. What they are starting to look at using heart rate variability to diagnose is anxiety and depression. Because we know that people who have low heart rate variability have a greater risk of depression, anxiety, heart disease, and sometimes immune system issues, okay? And that's just probably gonna grow from that. So why that is because the more shallow you breathe, right? And we all are pretty shallow breathers, unless you work really hard at, you know, being a good breather. But we all are pretty shallow breathers. And so what that means is if you just think about the more shallow your breath is, the you know, less movement in your heart, the bigger your breath is, the more movement is coming. So high heart rate variability is really what we're looking at. So what we're looking at are longer, slower, deeper breaths in smaller amount of time, okay? When we are stressed, you know, our heart rate, you know, our breathing gets real shallow. I can't tell you how many students I'm like, stop holding your breath. And they're talking to me and they're still holding their breath in my office. Yeah, I do that a lot. Stop holding your breath. So it's just, we do it a lot unconsciously, okay? So what, if you can, you know, this is just kind of a gross way, but good heart rate variability is if you take 6 to 7 breaths in 1 minute time. And you guys all know how you did on that. So here's the really cool thing. Here's the really cool thing. So the goal is like 6 to 7 breaths. And mind you, this is, you know, kind of just a general easy thing to do. It's not super, super specific, but generally about 6 to 7 breaths in 1 minute. Here's the really cool thing. It was proven that 2 weeks of breathing activity, and it's this one up here, inhale, exhale, pause at the bottom of your exhale and repeat 15 times. If you did that for 2 weeks, your heart rate variability would improve in 2 weeks' time. Okay. So breathing, you know, to help your mood and your affect, using breathing exercises takes very little time to see the difference. 2 weeks is pretty normal. Some people feel it immediately though. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the vagus nerve. So we all know what the vagus nerve is. It's one of 2 super long nerves in the body. Actually, I think yes, I love this slide. Welcome to your vagus nerve. So I want you to think about this. So your vagus nerve starts up here and hooks into every single organ you have. So when your sympathetic nervous system gets lit up, so do certain organs. When your parasympathetic nervous system comes online, it affects all those organs. That is freaking amazing to me, okay? So you can totally, your breathing is the only thing in your body that is both autonomic, or your breathing is the one thing in your autonomic nervous system that you do unconsciously and consciously. What? Like, that's insane. So you don't think to breathe, thank God, because we'd all pass out by now. You just naturally breathe, but you can control your breathing and play around with your breathing, and it can have amazing effects on your mood and your health, your physical health as well. And that's probably one of, I hands down, I always teach that. So even like while I'm sitting here and I'm talking, can you guys just maybe count on your fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to yourself, do 5 of the breaths that I recommended. So you inhale through your nose, not your mouth, inhale through your nose, exhale. And at the very bottom of your exhale, pause for 2, 3, 5 seconds, and then inhale again. And then just do that 5 times, just while I'm talking to you, okay? But that's why I just wanted to give you, so the autonomic nervous system is hooked into everything. So, what you're thinking affects what's going on downstairs, and what's going on downstairs affects what you're thinking. And it just sometimes can get to be a hamster, just can kind of feel like it's spinning out of control. But there's a way to always find a way in. Okay. So this is something I thought you guys might like. Okay. So this is an acronym by a man named Siegelman, and he is a clinical psychologist. And he did a lot of studying with learned helplessness, and how individuals learn to subject themselves to unwanted or unwilling, uncomfortable, behaviors. They learn how they learn that. How do they learn that? And then how can they unlearn it, kind of thing. He looked at that. About Pavlov's dog, it's kind of that learned helplessness, but he did it and applied it to human beings. Okay. So what he found out is that there are 5 crucial things that characteristics or elements that somebody needs to move towards a more positive lifestyle, positive feeling. One is positive emotions, cultivating positive emotions. When we cultivate positive emotion, it signals our body to release dopamine. Okay. So just immersing yourself in satisfaction, things that are very satisfying to you, things that are very soothing to you. Okay. It can be anywhere from nature to art to singing. One of the things that I forgot to mention is with the vagus nerve, humming, singing, chanting, all stimulate the vagus nerve. So those activities like singing or humming or chanting, those are all things that help you. I mean, like we know, like people that sing and stuff like that, it really increases certain levels of feel-good hormones in their body. That's why. It's because the vagus nerve likes that. If I had you all hum right now, let's do it. Let's all hum. Feels good. Kind of fun. Some of the corners of your mouth's turned up, There's a lot behind that. Like we look at that and we think it's silly, but it's not. It's really very valuable. The other thing that's really important is engagement. Find an activity in which you lose track of time. And I know that's hard when we look at being in school and stuff like that, but you don't need, I'm talking about 3 to 5 minutes where you just you might have to set a timer. We lose track of time on social media or on our phones all the time. Well, why not do it on purpose in an attempt to cultivate something that's very healing for our minds and our body? So laughter is huge. Laughter releases all the good ones: serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin. So, pick up your phone and listen to a comedian or watch a blooper or something. Look at pictures that make you smile and takes you back to that moment. Like all that stuff is simple, right? but we just don't think to do it. We might need to start doing that, okay? Relationships are huge, and we know this from all the studies that are done with the elderly and isolation, and what, how damaging isolation is for elderly people. So relationships release oxytocin. Healthy relationships release oxytocin. And so what do you do to encourage that? What do you do to encourage healthy connections? And sometimes the people that we are closest to, or we have the closest connection to, is not, especially if you're in school, they're not right there, but maybe in the moment you need that connection. So then you create ways of having that connection, like a picture, or maybe you FaceTime more if they live really far away and you can't see them for a long time, so it's just things to just like help your system. Like this is so much as a natural response to stressors. So then you have to adjust, but we just don't think to adjust. We just think, what's wrong with us? But there's lots of things you can do to just cultivate people that have passed away that you loved and you were really close to. You can find a way to honor them and have that, element that they gave you or that you shared together back, and then finding meaning in life, huge. Why you do what you do, serving others, purpose, and being able to get outside yourself. And how you do that is very different. Some people, do a lot of different ways. They do nature, they do religion, they do, some certain types of groups, but you gotta have a way, you gotta have a go-to to get outside yourself, because sometimes it just gets tough. Life gets really tough. But when you connect to that meaning in your life, that releases endorphins. And even just thinking about, why am I doing this? Why am I becoming a nurse? Especially when it's hard. I got to remember why I'm doing this. That just sends little signals to your body to release endorphins. And then I talked about this a little bit. Accomplishments release serotonin. So setting realistic goals and striving toward them, self-discipline and grit. So, those lists that you make and you cross them off and you feel good, that's why. So really a lot of, when I see anxious students, a lot of times I have them break up their day into 4-hour increments, and then to make 3 goals in those each 4-hour increments. And when you start with your first one, if you didn't accomplish one of the 3 goals, and bring it back to bring it over to the next 3 hours, like that. But that's what that is we know that when you cross off, you accomplish something, it's a little surge of serotonin. Okay. Did you guys all know that? Huh? Is it new to anybody? Thanks. Okay, so here are some states and traits of positivity. I kind of touched on the relationships. Supportive relationships, okay, encouraging relationships. And I think to some degree there are those people who are willing to tell you what you need to hear, even though you don't want to hear it, but it's how they tell you. Do you know what I mean? If you got those people who will tell you and you're like, shut up, but if you got people that are, really being aggressive about it, that's not so great. Caring, internally caring and externally caring. We kind of tend to do more of the opposite. Okay. Strengths and virtues. So focusing on your strengths rather than always trying to improve or focus on your weaknesses. Just doing that, like just focusing on what you're good at as opposed to what you're bad at. Actually, it's easier to do that. So we know that it's easier to start a positive new behavior than it is to change an old bad behavior. So we know that. And so that's just kind of with that. And probably one of the reasons why it is that, when you're focusing on a bad behavior and you're not paying attention, as you're focusing on the bad behavior, you start having this conversation in your head, and it's probably a lot of negative thinking. Negative emotional energy is more draining than physical energy. People can be emotionally exhausted so much more than physically exhausted. But focusing on the positive traits or your strengths actually help boost your energy. Okay. Self-compassion. That's a big one. I work a lot on that one with myself and students. You know, we are so willing to be kind to other people and say encouraging words. And then we talk to ourselves in a manner we wouldn't talk to our worst enemy in when we make a mistake. Or so your language is so important. I cannot stress that enough. So when you make mistakes, kind of when I said, you know, getting to that spot of non-judgmentalness, that's where compassion is. You know, you can really mess up and not be happy about the fact you mess up, and then find a way to be in just a space with it, not continue that negative chatter. And there's tons of different ways to do that. Optimistic, gratitude, and mindfulness. I just actually talked a little bit about mindfulness just then. There's a lot of gratitude studies out there about the power of gratitude and making gratitude lists and making them often. So I will tell you, one of the things I really learned about, you know, when I was really looking and studying this, is that really successful people do little things often. They don't do these big, huge things. So while they're going to the bathroom, they take 10 deep breaths. While they are waiting for a teacher, they make a few gratitude lists. It's these little things very often that they do throughout the day that actually helps them be successful. Exercise is huge. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We already know that. Exercise, in some cases, exercise works better than psychotropic medication. That's huge. But if you're taking psychotropic medication and you exercise, it's going to work even better. So exercise is big. And when I talk about exercise and we're talking about it affecting your mood, we're not talking about it has to be this hour workout. I'm talking about 5 minutes, you know, twisting and twirling or taking the stairs or, you know, stretching, just any kind of movement. If I had time, we do that here. Okay. Although I am doing mindfulness and movement next week for the wellness fair. I just thought about that. And then finding spots of flow. So finding activities where you just kind of forget time, whether it's music or art or being out in nature or playing with kids. I mean, it can be anything, just where you kind of lose yourself for a few moments in your day. And then spiritual engagement or meaning. And exposure to all of these things is paramount. So if you're reading a lot of this stuff, you know, just maybe a couple sentences a day, or if you're around a lot of people that kind of exude this, being exposed to this, the more you expose yourself to this, the more you will just automatically do it. Okay. Okay. Okay, so let's look at, just real quick, you have a piece of paper. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, and I really apologize. Again, I love this stuff and I could spend all day. So I want you to think about, and you can write it down on your paper if you want, but how do you evoke positive states and traits in your day? How aware of you are what you're paying attention to throughout your day? You know, you just kind of answer that to yourself. I think the honest answer would be probably 80 to 75% of the time, we have no idea what we're thinking about or what we're paying attention to. Even when you start to pay attention, the reality is your mind wanders. So I think that's a real, you know, just honestly, how much time. So now what you might want to do is just take 1 or 2 minutes a day where you kind of cultivate a mindset where you pay attention to what your mind is paying attention to. A lot of times we don't even pay attention to our minds until our self-talk is so self-defeating and self-detrimental that you can't take a test, or we can't do clinicals, or I can't even study, or I can't sleep. Then you start paying attention to what your mind is doing, right? But there's a way to kind of get ahead of it. To some degree, that chattering of the mind is a natural response to overstimulation. It is. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just a natural response to overstimulation. So then if that's the case, then we kind of have to infuse it with some ways to kind of quiet it a little bit. And then on a daily basis, how are you influencing your physical health positively? Do you take the stairs? When you're walking from your car to the building, do you notice the trees? Do you notice the weather? Do you smell the air? Do you hear the birds? You know, are you like, God damn it? You know, something simple like that, you know. Obviously eating well, but let's say you have a horrible diet. Well, you know things to eat that would be good for you. Is there one that you could do that you would like that you could just start doing? Nuts and seeds, really easy, really good for you. You know, as we're eating cookies and chips, that's what's not my menu. But you know what I mean? Like, so we ate a sandwich, but can you grab berries later today? Or, you know, later today, can you have a bunch of dark leafy greens somehow? I'm all about just adding, because we know taking away actually is not very successful. And so adding actually something positive is. So, you know, things like that, maybe listening to music that just, you know, makes your heart sing or get your blood pumping, you know. That's a way to positively affect your health, physical health. And then how are you evoking positive feelings? You know, on purpose, do you kind of let yourself, you know, take a moment to be grateful, take a moment to be content, to be proud of yourself, to give yourself credit for the hard work that you're doing, even when no one else thinks you're doing it, you know? And do you take moments to kind of give yourself some positive feedback about who you are, what you're doing, okay? We don't probably do that too much. Another way that you can really evoke, though, positive feelings is, again, pictures. Take a few moments. We're on our phones all the time. Why not use it for a little bit of good, a little bit of mental break, you know, a little bit of mind reset. Look at 4 or 5 pictures, you know, listen to music that you love, a podcast. And it doesn't need to be 20 minutes. It's like, just take 1 to 4 minutes. Okay. I wanted to remind you, and I know you guys all know this, but sometimes we forget, you have to do the work. No one's going to do it for you, and nobody can do it for you. I actually was just talking to a student earlier today, and it's like, you know, yes, people can make you feel really good, but that's temporary. That's not that's not where we're wanting to be. You want to make you feel good. Okay. And then internal problems need internal solutions. Okay. Here's some barriers. So here are some things you might bump up against. We all do. Barriers of cultivating a positive affect, mood, and mindset. Okay. A sense of victimhood. Just so always thinking that somebody else is to blame. We don't have any responsibility. It's everybody else's fault. That's a real barrier. Okay. Inability to admit shortcomings. So yeah, you know, I messed up, or yeah, I don't like to do this, or yeah, I have a hard time doing that, you know. Just, you're human, just admitting some of your shortcomings. Sense of entitlement, that's the big one. You know, just thinking that you are owed something without doing the work. This is the biggest one. Inability to admit that one is not self-sufficient. So sometimes we create these facades that we can do it all and be all, and that we are completely self-sufficient and we don't need anybody else. That is not ever going to be the truth. Okay. And like, there's lots of nuances to that too, that I can't go into, but there's lots of different nuances to it. Okay. A a lot of those nuances happened with your later teen, early 20 children that think they can, but you're still paying some of the bills. It's like little things like that, and then understanding the difference between wanting something and liking something. So wanting something and desire and craving, that's like a dopamine rush. Liking something and just, knowing it's good for you, you just kind of have to be careful between the two. And especially when you notice you have a lot of cravings, no matter what they are, or you want, I need, I have to have. You got, when you say those words, you got to put the brakes on. Okay. Because basically what that means is that there's probably a really strong attachment, maybe an emotional attachment to that might need to be looked at. But liking something is very different. But what that means is if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's okay. Wanting something is if it doesn't happen, the world is going to explode. Or you hate that person. Something like that. Okay, so I just want you to look at the areas of your life and its positivity. So family, what's the positive? Like 1 to 5. 5 is uber positive. And yes, I did use the word uber. And then 1 is like not positive at all. And so just like to yourself or on your little piece of paper, family, what would you rate them? Work, 1 to 5, what would you rate it? Now, if you wanted a 1 to 10, go ahead and do 1 to 10. I don't want to, you can do whatever you want, but just, 1's really great and 1's not great at all. What's your work positivity? Social, what's your social positivity? School, what's the positivity rating on that? And then just extracurricular activities. What are you doing in your free time? And what's the positivity rating? Not that you really enjoy those things, but what does it do to enhance the positivity in your life? Okay. Does that make sense? I can think of a lot of extra activities that are real fun to do, but they don't really. Okay. And so here's for some practical strategies. I think this is what the rest of this is. So some practical strategies to help performance and success is you have to be able to allow for quiet, which means that, again, I go back to that 1 minute to 4 minute, not quieting your mind. Your mind is always doing something. I remember years ago, like when we used to, talk about mindfulness, and they used to say, quiet your mind. Like, no, that's not possible. It's going to kind of be chattering. What is possible is, so usually when you first start mindfulness, the thoughts are like this, and then as you practice it, the thoughts become like this. And then the longer you practice it, so basically there creates more space in between your thoughts, and your thoughts aren't as much. Like you're not thinking all these kind of unnecessary or reactive thoughts. You're just kind of thinking the thoughts that are kind of coming through that means something, so to speak. Okay. Develop a plan, write down thoughts and feelings, behavior you want to develop, and including the triggers that make you want to be better. What are the things that make you want to be better? So you could go back to the whoop exercise and apply it to that. Is there a person that makes you want to be better? Is there, I don't know. And then value versus cost. I'm going to liken this to fitness. So if you value fitness, you will do it at all costs. Okay. So that's the difference. So there's a lot of things that we value, but we don't think it's worth the cost, especially when it comes to ourselves. So just maybe make a little list of what you value, whether you're doing it or not, and then maybe what you see it as the cost. Because a lot of times we don't do things that we really, really need to do because we think the cost is too high. But I'm going to tell you, it probably in no way is. What you value, achieve at any cost. Now, you might need some help figuring out how to do that, but yeah. And then I will tell you mental rehearsing. So physically imagining. So I used to do a lot of guided imagery. I used to do it a lot with some classes. And so what we know is like guided imagery, that actually increases the chance you envision and you fulfill your vision. Like that is actually, we know that that's a really helpful practice. And we also know that when you do guided imagery about something soothing or something lovely, something happening, our body releases the chemicals, the feel-good chemicals, as if we were actually there. So if you love the ocean and you get really good at being detailed in your guided imagery of being at a particular ocean, your body starts to elicit chemicals as if you were in front of that ocean. Okay. Mantras are great. I love sayings. I love phrases. Sometimes we need them, especially when it gets tough. Phrases, prayers, same thing. Okay. Saying them out loud is more effective than just saying them to yourself, but saying them to yourself is not ineffective. Okay. But if you could go somewhere and say it out loud and hear yourself say it out loud, it's more effective. Schedule some time to implement some of these new things for yourself. You could use your phone. They got those watches. Remember, this is time to stand up. That kind of thing. Well, you can do that as far as cultivating a more positive affect and mindset. And then reflect and have accountability. So like that WHOOP thing, look at it and in a month or so, or maybe even 2 weeks. And are you still following it? Are you still adhering to it? Or is there something new you could take or do? Use your phone to feel better. We already talked about that. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are so many apps. Like I was going to list them and I'm like, I can't, there's just too many. There's so many mindfulness apps. There's so many peaceful apps. There's so many story time apps. I mean, there's just so many things on your phone. So maybe for 5 minutes out of the day, if you're going to spend 20 minutes scrolling social media, take 5 or 4 minutes to do this, something good. You could do the timer. You could look at the photographs, stuff like that. Okay. And then the mantra for success is lots of little things often. So gratitude lists are huge. Gratitude lists elicit dopamine and oxytocin. I always, and it's actually part of one of the most successful recovery programs. It's called the 12 Steps AA program. Anybody heard of that? Gratitude list it's a major part of their program because of what it does. Okay. AA has been around forever and they've known it for a long time. Science is just catching up to it. Okay. And then I want to go back maybe if we have time to do the silver lining exercise. So when I talk about mindfulness, I wanted to real quick just touch base. There's different types of mindfulness. One type of mindfulness is called focused attention, which is where you focus on one thing in particular. It could be an object that you focus on, like a picture of a loved one or something, or it could be you focus on your breath. You do a body scan, thumb, index finger, middle finger. So it's, you're like focusing on something while you're practicing mindfulness. There's also just considered open monitoring. This can get very interesting where you're just letting your mind go. And it's like your thoughts are clouds and you just kind of watch them run across the screen. It's like a little ticker tape at the bottom of I hate those at the bottom of the TV because I want to pay attention to that. But every now and then I'm looking down there. It's like that. So you learn to have the feelings, but not react to them. And then the other one, mindfulness is an emotional tone. That is another practice I was going to do, but I don't think we're going to have time. So basically it's you sit and you could just do this while I'm talking and you could just think of an emotional tone, an emotion that you like how it feels in your heart center, joy, peace, relaxation, contentment, success. I don't care what it is. And you could just think, where in your body do you feel it? You just kind of call it up as I'm talking. And you just kind of take a few moments and let yourself be there. Maybe notice if it has a color, notice if you let it focus a little more, that it gets a little bigger, okay? And then what I want you to do is I want you to think of a negative feeling that you really do not like feeling at all. And then again, where in your body do you feel it? What brings it to mind? What are experiences that you have that cause it? And then go back to the positive. So that's what that is you physically make yourself move through emotional tones. Because the goal, people, is to get better at feeling, not to eliminate or change feelings. It's to get better at feeling. And we all have our ones that don't like that. And then, oh, I love this quote. Remember, there's moments when everything goes well. Don't be afraid, it won't last. It's true. So don't get too attached, don't get too high on your horse, because the opposite is also true. It seems there's days when everything seems to go to the front. It won't, don't be frightened. It won't last. So I think that's a great reminder. That's just life. And laugh, laugh, laugh. Laugh releases all the feel-good hormones that we want in our life, and I can't stress it enough. And really, when we talk about cultivating a positive affect and a mood and a mindset and motivation, when we're talking about that, we are really talking about engineering a life for ourselves. So when you're engineering a life for yourself, there are things that you got to do. There are steps to take. There are processes to do. You can't skip around, but you got to find the one that works best for you. That's for sure. In regards to motivation, we've kind of been talking about them all. Delayed gratification is proven to be the best, not denying. So if you have something that you like a motivation, like let's say I'm not motivated to do homework, I just want to watch Netflix. If you can delay turning on Netflix for 20 seconds, sometimes it'll disrupt that need or that want. What's the word I'm looking for? Craving. It can eliminate so the goal is 20 seconds, people. So it's not going to work all the time, every time, but you can kind of start playing with that. But they have found if you start to delay your gratification 20 seconds, then you can start to delay it 40 seconds, then 60 seconds, and then eventually it just kind of evaporates. Okay. We talked a little bit about like versus want, value versus cost. What is, at the end of the day, what is of value for you today? Maybe even with this, was anything here of value to you? List 3 reasonable actions you can change before the end of next week. I love that one. You might want to jot something now that you're thinking about it, because you'll forget on a piece of paper. Simplifying your schedule. I talked about that. Breaking the day up into increments when it feels overwhelming. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And what holds your attention determines your action. That is so true. Don't be pushed around by the fears in your mind. Be led by the dreams in your heart. And you can't go back and change the beginning of your life, but you can start where you are and change the ending. One of my favorites. Okay. Oh, here are some books that I've actually read that I can actually recommend. Just FYI. Any questions? Yeah.
What is the effect of chronic pain as a persistent instigator related to the autonomic nervous system?
So I really can't answer that without having more information. Do you know what I mean? Like what is causing the chronic pain? But there is a loop to it, 100%. Yes. And so what's most helpful is to get a little bit of an understanding, get a little bit of the triggers, and then get a little bit of what works to help get your sympathetic nervous system offline and your parasympathetic online. But 100% that person's question, it's true. And so, do you know what I mean? Like, I just can't I can't generalize about it because it's different for everybody. But yeah, if they want to email me, they can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a great question. Very good question.
We're gonna,
Anything else?
if people have other questions, we can stay for a few minutes, but I do want to be mindful of time for people who have classes and meetings. And our online folks too. The survey's up here. Please, it is really short. Everybody take a couple minutes to fill that out. Even if you snap the QR code right now and do it as you're walking to your next place, that would be great. We really value your input and we use your suggestions to identify the next topics that we present on. And the people that we invite, just like Julie here, to be guest presenters. So can we give her a round of applause and thank you? Thank you, guys. It will be recorded and posted on the IPE website. If you have not yet downloaded or all the steps to add the IPE events calendar, it's new. If you want to know what's coming up, you need to do that. There's a really short PDF. It's actually attached to today's calendar invite. I put it below the picture and it's on the IPE website, which is just clarksoncollege.edu/IPE. I want to make sure every student and employee gets that downloaded so it's really easy to access at any time. And it'll also have the recordings so we can come back and watch this and other ones later. So thank you, everyone.